My dad hit me when I wouldn't give my penthouse to my brother, then I found his offshore account. And exposed everything. The sleek, minimalist lines of her smartphone felt alien in Elara Vance's trembling hand, a stark contrast to the elegant antique furniture that adorned her penthouse living room. The heavy, polished mahogany of the Empire-style desk, the intricate carvings on the gilded chairs, and the soft sheen of the hand-knotted Persian rug beneath her feet were all testaments to a different era, a time when craftsmanship and permanence were valued. The city lights, usually a comforting tapestry of glimmering hope outside her panoramic windows, seemed to mock her, reflecting the cold, hard words that had just scrolled across the screen. It was a text message, short and brutally direct, from her son, Garrett. "Mom, we need to talk about the penthouse. Braden needs a place in the city for his startup, and your place is perfect. It's time you thought about the family's future, not just your own comfort. We need it. Give it to us." Elara, a woman of 78 years, a widow whose life had once revolved around the vibrant laughter of her late husband, now felt a familiar ache bloom in her chest, a pain far deeper than any physical ailment. It settled heavily, a cold, sharp shard twisting in her heart, reminiscent of countless other smaller wounds accumulated over the years. This wasn't just a request, it was a demand, delivered with an icy presumption that chilled her to the bone. Her son, her only son, had just metaphorically struck her across the face with his audacity. He hadn't asked, he had commanded. He hadn't considered her feelings, he had erased them entirely, reducing her most cherished possession, the home she had built with her beloved Arthur, to a mere commodity for his son's convenience. Her gaze drifted around the opulent room, from the hand-knotted Persian rug beneath her feet to the priceless original artworks gracing the walls, each item a testament to a life meticulously curated, a life built on love and shared dreams. The scent of old money and cherished memories seemed to cling to the air, mingling with the faint aroma of the lilies in the crystal vase on the antique credenza. This penthouse wasn't just property, it was a repository of memories, a sanctuary, a piece of her very soul. Each painting held a story, each piece of furniture a shared laugh or a quiet evening spent with Arthur. And now, they wanted her to give it away. For Braden, her grandson, a young man of 24 who had never lifted a finger for himself, whose every whim had been financed by her endless generosity. A bitterness, sharp and metallic, rose in her throat. A wave of profound weariness washed over Elara. It was an exhaustion that seeped into her bones, far deeper than any physical fatigue. For decades, she had been the silent provider, the endless wellspring from which her children and grandchildren drew without hesitation, without question, and seemingly, without gratitude. She had yearned for love, for respect, for a place at their table that wasn't solely defined by her financial contributions. She longed for a simple, "How are you, Mom?" that wasn't followed by a veiled request. Instead, she had been relegated to the role of an ATM, a financial conduit, a means to an end. This demand for her penthouse, this final, blatant act of disrespect, was not merely a request for a property. It was a demand for her very identity, for her right to exist as anything more than a bank account. The silence in the penthouse was profound, broken only by the distant hum of the city, a symphony of indifference outside her windows. Elara did not cry. Her eyes, though clouded with pain, were dry, a testament to the years she had spent holding back, swallowing her hurt, and refusing to give them the satisfaction of her tears. There was no room for tears, only for a cold, hard clarity that settled deep within her bones. The dam had broken. The reservoir of patience, tolerance, and endless, unrequited love she had harbored for her family had finally, irrevocably, given way. This was the final straw, the culmination of years of quiet suffering and unanswered pleas for affection. A steely resolve, unfamiliar yet strangely liberating, began to solidify within her. Her fingers, still trembling slightly, moved with a newfound purpose across the screen. She did not respond to Garrett's message. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of an immediate reaction, nor the opportunity to manipulate her further. Instead, she opened her contacts, her thumb hovering over two specific names, Mr. Sterling, attorney, and Ms. Davies, private banker. The journey that had led her to this moment, to this quiet, dignified rebellion, had been long and arduous, paved with countless sacrifices and a lifetime of unappreciated generosity. And now, it was time for it to end. Elara Vance had not always been the solitary matriarch of a vast fortune. Her life had begun modestly, growing up in a quiet, middle-class neighborhood where frugality was a virtue and hard work a given. But her marriage to Arthur Vance, a brilliant and visionary entrepreneur, had propelled them into a world of immense wealth and privilege, a world she had never imagined for herself. Arthur, a man of profound integrity and boundless love, had ensured that Elara was not just a beneficiary but an active participant in their financial empire. He had spent hours explaining complex market trends, patiently walking her through investment strategies, and teaching her about the wisdom of diversification. He had been meticulous about their wealth management, establishing a sophisticated network of offshore accounts not for evasion, but for intelligent, global wealth protection and strategic growth, anticipating future economic shifts and securing their legacy. Their shared dream was to build a legacy, not just of money, but of love, support, and a family united by genuine affection, a strong foundation for generations to come. When Arthur passed away 15 years prior, a sudden and crushing loss from a massive heart attack, Elara was left not only with a shattered heart but also with a sprawling, meticulously managed fortune. The silence in the penthouse had been deafening then, a vast emptiness where Arthur's laughter and his comforting presence had once filled every corner. She inherited properties across continents, a diverse portfolio of stocks and bonds, and the substantial network of offshore accounts that Arthur had established to secure their assets and ensure their future generations' prosperity. The penthouse, their sanctuary, their shared masterpiece where they had dreamed and built their life together, was perhaps the most tangible symbol of their life together, a living memory of him. In the initial years of her widowhood, grief had been a heavy shroud, muffling her senses and clouding her judgment. She had been vulnerable, longing for connection and family. But through that fog, one constant remained, her unwavering devotion to her children, Garrett and his younger sister, Olivia. She believed that Arthur would have wanted her to use their wealth to ensure their children and grandchildren thrived, to give them opportunities they might not otherwise have. She saw herself as a guardian of Arthur's dreams, a facilitator of their family's success. It was a belief that, in hindsight, had become the very instrument of her quiet suffering, a trap of her own making. Garrett, her only son, had always possessed a sense of entitlement, a trait subtly nurtured by their comfortable upbringing. Even as a child, he expected special treatment, a larger slice of cake, the newest toy. He had a natural charm, yes, a glib way with words that often obscured his true intentions, but it was often overshadowed by a profound lack of ambition and a penchant for expensive tastes. His wife, Celeste, was a woman whose material desires seemed to grow exponentially with every designer label, every luxury car advertisement she saw. She was perpetually chasing the next status symbol, her life a performance designed for a discerning audience of her peers. Elara had tried to love Celeste as a daughter, to welcome her into the family fold, but Celeste's interactions with Elara had always been transactional, her eyes glinting with an unspoken calculation whenever Elara's financial standing was mentioned, or a new expense arose in their lives. The stream of financial requests had started subtly, almost imperceptibly, soon after Arthur's passing. It began with seemingly minor emergencies, then graduated to investments and needs. First, it was Garrett's struggling startup, a seemingly innovative tech venture that promised to revolutionize an obscure sector. Elara had remembered the glossy business plan, the enthusiastic presentations Garrett gave, filled with buzzwords and grand projections. She had poured in nearly $5 million, convinced she was nurturing his entrepreneurial spirit, just as Arthur would have. She remembered the excited phone calls, the grand promises, and then the quiet, embarrassed silence when the company folded just 18 months later, leaving behind a trail of debt and unfulfilled dreams. Garrett had merely shrugged, "It was a learning experience, Mom. At least we tried." No offer to repay, no genuine apology for the colossal loss, just a casual dismissal that left Elara feeling hollowed out. Then came the houses. Garrett and Celeste's first home, a sprawling suburban mansion with a meticulously manicured lawn and a 3-car garage, had been purchased with a hefty down payment from Elara, nearly $500,000. It's an investment, Mom, Garrett had assured her, and it'll be perfect for when the grandkids visit. We'll have so much space for family gatherings. The grandkids visited, certainly, but Elara often found herself relegated to a guest room, an afterthought at family gatherings, while her money facilitated their lavish parties and exclusive social events. Years later, they needed a bigger house, a grander estate in an even more exclusive community, citing space for the children to grow, and better schools. Elara had provided the funds for that too, another substantial sum that made the move possible, driven by the lingering hope that this grander gesture would finally earn her a cherished place, a deeper connection within their new, more opulent life. Instead, the house became a backdrop for their increasingly exclusive social life, from which Elara was almost always excluded, her calls often going unanswered on the evenings of their large parties. The luxury cars were a recurring theme, a constant symbol of their escalating desires. Garrett drove a sleek Mercedes-Benz S-Class, meticulously detailed and gleaming, while Celeste insisted on a new Range Rover Velar every 2 to 3 years, the latest model always in the trendiest color. Elara had quietly paid off the loans, or made the down payments, or simply bought them outright, usually at their casual suggestion. Mom, my car's getting old, and you know how important it is for my image for client meetings, Garrett would say, never quite asking, but always implying, always painting it as a necessity for his vague, ever-shifting career. Elara had never denied them, believing that these material comforts would somehow translate into emotional dividends, a currency she craved far more than any financial return. She wanted their presence, their affection, not just their fleeting gratitude for a new vehicle. Their children, Elara's grandchildren, Braden, the eldest, and his younger sister, Chloe, were also beneficiaries of this endless generosity. Braden's private school tuition, then his prestigious university fees at an Ivy League institution, and later his expensive gap year adventures across Europe and Asia, all financed by Elara. He sent postcards, sometimes, but never called. Chloe's equestrian lessons, her designer wardrobe from exclusive boutiques, her luxurious birthday parties with elaborate themes and expensive entertainment, each a significant drain on Elara's resources, yet given without a second thought. Granny Elara is the best. Chloe would exclaim, a fleeting hug offered before she dashed off to her latest designer shopping spree, funded by Elara's credit card, a card that Elara herself had provided specifically for Chloe's needs. Elara wanted to be loved, not just applauded for her open wallet. The monthly allowances were perhaps the most telling, the clearest sign of their complete dependence. Garrett and Celeste received a substantial monthly stipend, ostensibly to cover living expenses and help with the kids. In reality, it funded their high-end restaurant dining, their exclusive club memberships, their designer clothes, and their frequent luxury vacations to places like Santorini, the Maldives, and Aspen, destinations Elara had only seen in travel magazines. Elara would see their glamorous social media posts, pictures of them laughing, toasting champagne, living a life of unbridled indulgence, while she sat alone in her penthouse, dining on a simple meal, a knot of loneliness tightening in her stomach. They never invited her, never offered to take her on one of these lavish trips, never even offered to pay for a simple lunch, let alone a grand dinner. The irony was a bitter taste in her mouth. She longed for their company, for shared meals, for simple conversations about life, not about money. She would call, hoping to connect, to hear about their day, only to be met with hurried excuses. "Oh, Mom, we're just heading out," Garrett would say, his voice already distant, or, "Celeste is so busy with her charity work, you know." The irony was not lost on Elara. Celeste's charity work often involved attending galas and social events that required expensive gowns and extensive travel, all subtly funded by Elara. On the rare occasions they did visit her, usually around holidays, the conversations inevitably veered towards money, their eyes darting around her opulent living room as if calculating the worth of each antique. "Mom, you know, the property taxes are just astronomical this year," Garrett would sigh, or, "Braden really needs a new car for university, his old one is just embarrassing." They would speak in a tone that suggested Elara owed them this, that her wealth was their birthright, a flowing river to quench their insatiable thirst. Her attempts to discuss her own life, her health, her memories of Arthur, were met with polite but unmistakable disinterest, quickly redirected back to their needs. One particularly poignant memory stood out, etched in her mind with the clarity of a fresh wound. It was Elara's 75th birthday. She had hoped for a quiet family dinner, a chance to simply be together, to feel cherished. Instead, Garrett and Celeste had arrived late, bearing a perfunctory gift that felt like an afterthought, and spent most of the evening on their phones, occasionally glancing up to offer strained smiles. Chloe had asked for a new designer handbag, right there at the dinner table, as casually as asking for a glass of water. Braden had brought up his plans for another entrepreneurial venture, that would, of course, require significant seed funding from her, detailing the costs with a meticulousness he never applied to his studies. Elara had looked at them, truly looked at them, across the elegant dining table laden with food she had lovingly prepared, and realized with a crushing certainty that she was not a mother, not a grandmother, but merely a walking, breathing financial institution. The realization had been bitter, a taste of ash in her mouth, colder than any dish served that night. Yet, she had persevered. She had continued to give, driven by a deep-seated maternal instinct, a desperate hope that one day, they would see her, truly see her, not just her money. She imagined a future where they would gather around her, not for financial gain, but for genuine affection, for shared laughter and stories, a future where her sacrifices would finally bear the fruit of love. She had clung to the belief that her sacrifices would eventually cultivate love and respect, that they would finally acknowledge her as a person, not a resource. But with Garrett's cold demand for her penthouse, that fragile hope had finally shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The quiet desperation that had simmered beneath her calm exterior for years now crystallized into a chilling resolve. The era of Elara the ATM was over. The phone in Elara's hand felt heavier now, charged with a new, potent energy, a weight of significant decision. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing. The decision, though painful in its finality, brought with it an unexpected surge of clarity, a cleansing wave washing over her. She took a deep breath, the scent of fresh-cut flowers in her living room a gentle counterpoint to the storm brewing within her, a silent promise of a new beginning. Her first call was to Mr. Sterling, her long-standing attorney. His calm, measured voice was a welcome anchor in the swirling chaos of her emotions. "Mr. Sterling," Elara began, her voice steady, remarkably devoid of emotion, as if she were discussing a simple business transaction, "I need you to initiate a comprehensive review of all financial arrangements I have with Garrett Vance, Celeste Vance, Braden Vance, and Chloe Vance. Effective immediately, I want to terminate all recurring payments, allowances, and any financial commitments I have for them. This includes, but is not limited to, mortgage payments, car loan installments, credit card statements I've been settling, private school fees, university tuition, and any other regular disbursements. I also want to revoke any power of attorney or financial authorization they might have, however indirect. All funds associated with their support, including any trust funds they might have expected upon my passing, are to be reallocated. This must be done with absolute discretion and without prior notice to them. I want no opportunity for them to intervene." Mr. Sterling, a man who had handled Elara's affairs for decades, knew her well enough to recognize the steel beneath her polite request, the unyielding resolve in her tone. He did not question, did not offer platitudes or express surprise. "Understood, Mrs. Vance. I will begin the process immediately. It will take a little time to ensure all the various channels are completely shut off, given the complexity of your arrangements, but I will prioritize it. Do you have any specific concerns about immediate repercussions from their end?" "None that I cannot handle," Mr. Sterling. My only concern is that it is done thoroughly and definitively. I want every single tap turned off. Consider it done, Mrs. Vance. I will keep you updated on the progress. Next, she called Ms. Davies, her private banker. Ms. Davies oversaw Elara's extensive investment portfolio, including the meticulously managed offshore accounts that formed the bedrock of her wealth. Ms. Davies, Elara stated, her voice even firmer now, reflecting her growing certainty, I need to consolidate my liquid assets and adjust my investment strategy. Specifically, I need to ensure that no direct or indirect payments can be made from my accounts to Garrett, Celeste, Braden, or Chloe Vance, or to any entity they control. All standing orders, all automatic transfers linked to their expenses, must cease. I am aware of the implications, and I am prepared for them. I also need to verify the security and accessibility of all my offshore holdings. I want to ensure that my assets are fully under my control, and that no one else has any claim or access to them, now or in the future, other than what I explicitly direct in my updated will. Ms. Davies, equally professional and accustomed to handling large, complex estates, assured her of the immediate execution of her directives. Certainly, Mrs. Vance. Your offshore accounts are highly secure and fully liquid. We can initiate the necessary freezes and reallocations within the hour. We'll ensure all previous directives related to the Vance family are thoroughly revoked. Is there anything else I can assist you with? No, Ms. Davies. Just ensure no stone is left unturned. This is a matter of absolute personal importance. With these calls made, Elara felt a profound quietude descend upon her. It was not peace, not yet, but the calm before a storm, a stillness that comes after a momentous decision. She spent the rest of the day in her penthouse, gazing out at the city, lost in thought. She didn't dwell on the past with regret, nor did she anticipate the coming chaos with malice. There was only a quiet, resolute satisfaction, a sense of having finally taken control. She felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The first ripples of the financial drought began to appear within days, subtle at first, easily dismissed by the family. So accustomed to the seamless flow of funds, they initially dismissed them as minor glitches, momentary hiccups in a system they believed was infallible. Celeste, planning a lavish charity gala dinner, an event she considered crucial for her social standing, attempted to pay for a new designer gown with her credit card, the very one Elara had been quietly settling for years. The card was declined. She frowned, assuming a temporary system error or a limit breach that would be easily remedied. A few minutes later, she tried again. Declined. Annoyed, she called the bank, only to be informed, with polite regret, that the card was no longer active, the account closed. There must be some mistake, she fumed to the customer service representative, who could only repeat the same information. Celeste, unaware that her personal supplemental card was linked directly to Elara's primary account, dismissed it as an isolated incident, grumbling about incompetent bank staff and technical issues. She simply used another card, a personal one with a much lower limit, unaware of the deeper problem. Garrett, meanwhile, had a payment due for his new luxury sports car, a sleek, expensive model he had acquired only 6 months prior, boasting about its performance. He had set up an automatic transfer from an account he believed was the family's shared account, but which was, in reality, directly funded by Elara's offshore reserves. When the payment bounced, triggering an alert from the dealership and a terse call from his finance manager, he merely called his financial advisor, a euphemism for the bank's general customer service line, and demanded they fix the glitch. He was met with similar polite stonewalling. Sir, there appears to be insufficient funds in the account linked to your payment. We advise you to contact the account holder. Garrett scoffed, nonsense. My mother handles all that. It's always funded. Just transfer from the main account. He was too arrogant, too steeped in his own privilege, to realize the direct link had been severed, that the faucet had been turned off. Braden, always one for instant gratification, oblivious to financial realities, tried to pay for a last-minute flight to a ski resort with his friends in the Swiss Alps. His card was also declined. He tried another, then another, all supplementary cards Elara had provided over the years for his emergencies and needs. Each one failed. He was momentarily annoyed, assuming his allowance hadn't cleared yet, or that Granny had forgotten to top it up. He sent a curt text to his father, "Dad, my cards aren't working. Where's my money? I'm missing my flight." Chloe faced her own small crisis when her prestigious private school sent an email about an overdue tuition payment. She showed it to Celeste, who immediately dismissed it with a wave of her hand. "Your grandmother always handles that, darling. It's just an administrative error. I'll call them and sort it out." But when Celeste called the school, they confirmed that the direct debit for Chloe's tuition had been cancelled. They couldn't elaborate on who cancelled it, only that the instruction had come from the primary account holder's representative, Mr. Sterling. Celeste, still in denial, merely assumed Elara had simply forgotten to update some paperwork. "She's getting old," she muttered to Garrett later that evening, "she's probably just confused." These were mere tremors before the earthquake. The family, still ensconced in their bubble of privilege and denial, failed to connect the dots. They continued to believe these were isolated incidents, temporary inconveniences, rather than a systematic, deliberate shutdown of their entire financial ecosystem. They grumbled, they complained, they blamed the system, the banks, or even each other for forgetting to transfer money. But the slow, inexorable squeeze was tightening, and soon, it would become undeniably clear who had turned off the tap. And the panic, when it inevitably set in, would be profound and all-encompassing. The realization dawned upon Garrett and Celeste with the harsh, unforgiving light of a financial audit. It wasn't just a credit card, or a car payment, or a school fee. It was everything. Their substantial monthly allowance hadn't arrived for weeks. The mortgage company was sending increasingly stern notices, their tone escalating from polite reminders to legal threats. Their cleaner, gardener, and personal chef had all called, unpaid, their services abruptly terminated. The carefully constructed edifice of their luxurious lives, built entirely on Elara's generosity, was crumbling, brick by expensive brick, revealing the hollow core beneath. Panic, cold and visceral, finally seized them, stripping away their composure and their arrogance. Garrett, usually composed and arrogant, was visibly shaken, his face pale, his movements jerky. Celeste, whose meticulously maintained facade of composure rarely faltered, was now a portrait of wide-eyed terror, her designer clothes suddenly seeming like a flimsy disguise. They tried calling Elara, but she didn't answer. She simply let the phone ring, her heart calm, her resolve unshaken. They left increasingly frantic voicemails, a mixture of feigned concern and thinly veiled threats, their voices rising in pitch with each unanswered call. "Mom, are you okay? We're so worried. Why aren't you answering? There's something wrong with the bank accounts, maybe you should check it. This is really affecting us. This is unacceptable." After hours of unanswered calls, their desperation drove them to the only logical conclusion: they had to confront her in person. They piled into Garrett's rapidly depreciating luxury car, the one he was now desperately trying to figure out how to pay for, its impending repossession a dark cloud, and sped across the city to Elara's penthouse. Braden and Chloe, equally distraught by their sudden financial famine, followed in Chloe's smaller, but still luxurious, car, their faces mirroring their parents' agitation. The family, united not by love or concern but by monetary crisis, arrived at Elara's building in a flurry of anxious energy, their entitlement overriding any sense of propriety. The doorman, Thomas, accustomed to their occasional, often demanding visits, politely announced their arrival. Elara, seated serenely in her favorite armchair by the window, a rare first edition of a classic novel open on her lap, merely nodded. Her expression was calm, her eyes clear. "Send them up, Thomas. It's time." She closed the book, placing a delicate bookmark precisely at her page, a small act of composure before the storm. When the elevator doors chimed open, the Vance family spilled out, a tableau of escalating panic and indignation. Garrett, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and fear, his designer suit suddenly looking rumpled, led the charge. Celeste, her designer purse clutched tightly to her chest like a shield, looked wild-eyed, her mascara slightly smudged from unshed tears. Braden and Chloe hovered behind them, their usual carefree expressions replaced by petulance and confusion, looking like pampered children whose favorite toy had been snatched away. "Mom!" Garrett bellowed, not bothering with a greeting, his voice raw with accusation. "What in God's name is going on? My car payment bounced. Celeste's cards are dead. Chloe's school is threatening to send her home. What did you do? Are you trying to ruin us?" Elara slowly closed her book, placing it carefully on the side table beside a delicate porcelain teacup. Her gaze swept over them, cool and unwavering, taking in their disheveled appearances and desperate faces. There was no anger in her eyes, only a profound weariness that had been replaced by an iron will. "Welcome," she said, her voice soft but resonating with an authority they rarely heard, an unexpected steeliness. "Please, sit down." They didn't sit. They stood, agitated, like birds caught in a cage, restless and squawking. "Sit down, Garrett," Elara repeated, her tone hardening just enough to make him flinch, a rare tremor of fear running through him. He hesitated, then reluctantly slumped onto a nearby sofa, Celeste quickly joining him, clutching his arm. Braden and Chloe remained standing, shifting nervously, unsure whether to support their parents' outrage or fear their grandmother's uncharacteristic calm. "What did you do, Elara?" Celeste demanded, her voice shrill with hysteria. "Everything is cut off. Are you trying to ruin us? Do you know what this means for our lives? For our reputation? We'll be humiliated." Elara finally spoke, her voice clear and steady, cutting through Celeste's rising panic. "I have simply ceased financing a lifestyle that was never yours to begin with. I have stopped paying for your cars, your homes, your children's schools, your designer clothes, your lavish vacations, your exorbitant allowances. I have stopped being your ATM." The words were delivered with a quiet finality that left no room for negotiation. Garrett lunged forward, his face contorted in disbelief, his usual arrogance replaced by genuine terror. "My ATM? Is that what you think this is? We are your family. This is your responsibility. You have a fortune. It's for us. For your legacy. This is our inheritance." "My legacy, Garrett," Elara countered, her voice rising slightly, yet still controlled, "was meant to be love, respect, and a shared future built on genuine affection. Not a bottomless pit of entitlement. When your father and I built this life, it was so we could live comfortably, yes, but also to build something lasting, something meaningful, a foundation of security and love. Not to fuel endless greed and a life of unearned indulgence." "Greed?" Celeste shrieked, tears finally welling in her eyes, streaks of mascara running down her pale cheeks. "How dare you? We live a respectable life. Our children deserve the best. Braden needs this penthouse, Elara. He needs a launch pad for his career. You are being selfish. Cruel. Selfish?" Elara scoffed, a genuine, mirthless laugh escaping her lips. It was a sound they had never heard from her before, a sharp, bitter sound that resonated in the elegant room. "You demand my home, the last vestige of my life with Arthur, the very place I sought solace after his death, for your son's startup? A son who has never earned a single dollar honestly, who expects everything to be handed to him. You called me ungrateful when I refused, Garrett. You threatened to cut off my access to my own grandchildren, to sever any last thread of connection I had to them. You implied that I had hit you with my refusal, that I was a cruel, heartless woman for not simply handing over my most cherished possession, my sanctuary. She rose from her armchair, a small, frail woman, yet in that moment, she seemed to tower over them, her presence filling the room. Her eyes, usually soft, now burned with a cold, righteous fire, a lifetime of suppressed pain finding its release. You want to talk about hitting? You have been hitting me, Garrett, hitting me, for 15 years. Every time you demanded money without a thank you, every time you excluded me from your lives while happily spending my money, every time you treated me as a burden until you needed a new car or a new house. Every time you spoke about my money as if it were already yours, before I was even in my grave. That, she said, her voice trembling slightly with suppressed emotion, the words cutting through the air like blades, that was hitting me. And demanding my home, my sanctuary, for your son's convenience. That was the final, devastating blow. You hit me, Garrett, with your contempt and your insatiable greed, with your utter lack of empathy and your boundless entitlement. Garrett opened his mouth to protest, a pathetic sound escaping his lips, but Elara cut him off, her voice gaining strength, her words flowing with the force of a long-delayed torrent. And now, for the part you truly need to understand. She paused, letting her words hang in the air, creating a dramatic tension that silenced them completely, their eyes fixed on her, suddenly seeing a woman they had never truly known. For years, you have assumed my wealth was simply sitting in a local bank account, easily accessible, easily taken. What you failed to grasp, in your self-absorbed quest for more, is how Arthur and I truly managed our fortune. The vast majority of my assets, the very wellspring that has funded your extravagant lives for so long, are held in secure, meticulously managed offshore accounts. These are complex, global investment portfolios, specifically designed to protect and grow our wealth, and they are entirely under my control. You cannot access them. You cannot touch them. And now, I have instructed my attorney and my private banker to ensure that not a single cent from those accounts, or any of my other assets, will ever again be directed towards any of you. I have exposed the truth of my financial autonomy, and in doing so, I have exposed your utter dependence, your financial nakedness. The words hung heavy in the air, each one a hammer blow to their carefully constructed reality, shattering it into irreparable fragments. Garrett's jaw dropped, his face slack with shock. Celeste's face, already pale, turned ashen, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Braden and Chloe exchanged terrified glances, the weight of their grandmother's words finally beginning to sink in. The offshore accounts, the sheer, untouchable scale of it, hit them with the force of a physical blow. They had always vaguely known Elara was wealthy, but they had assumed it was domestic, manageable, and ultimately, theirs for the taking, an inheritance waiting for them. The revelation of this impenetrable, global financial fortress, controlled solely by the woman they had treated as an ATM, brought a horrifying clarity to their situation, a dawning understanding of their profound miscalculation. No, Mom, you can't. Garrett finally stammered, his voice cracking with genuine fear, all pretense of anger gone. You can't do this. We'll lose everything. Our house, our cars, our reputation. Think of the grandchildren, Mom. Think of Braden's future, Chloe's education. You're ruining us. You're destroying your own family. I am not ruining you, Elara stated calmly, walking towards the panoramic window, her back to them, her gaze fixed on the endless city lights. I am simply allowing you to stand on your own 2 feet. Something you should have learned to do decades ago. I am allowing you to face the consequences of your choices, to learn the lessons you have so carefully avoided. Celeste rushed towards her, stumbling, falling to her knees, clutching at Elara's elegant silk dress, burying her face in the fabric. Please, Elara. I beg you. We'll change. We'll be better. We'll visit you every day. We'll invite you everywhere. We'll be the family you always wanted. Just turn the money back on. We can't survive without it. We don't know how. Her pleas were desperate, laced with a raw, ugly fear that stripped away her usual polished veneer, revealing the terrified, dependent woman beneath. Elara looked down at her, her expression unreadable, devoid of warmth or pity. "You see, Celeste," she said, her voice devoid of warmth, "that is the problem. You only value me when my money is flowing. Your promises are empty, born only of desperation, not genuine affection. Your love is conditional, based solely on what you can extract from me. I am done. My decision is final. There is nothing left to discuss. This is blackmail." Braden suddenly blurted out, stepping forward, his voice shaky but defiant, a flicker of his usual entitlement returning. "You're trying to control us with your money. You can't just abandon us." Elara turned fully, her gaze piercing, unwavering, meeting his eyes with a chilling calm. "No, Braden," she said, her voice chillingly calm, "I am simply taking back what is mine. I am regaining control of my life, my peace, and my dignity. You are free to live your lives as you see fit. Just not on my dime. You are free to choose your own path, but it will be a path you pave yourselves." Garrett, defeated, sank back onto the sofa, his head in his hands. The fight had drained out of him, replaced by a profound, chilling despair. He looked at his mother, not seeing the frail old woman he had always dismissed, but a formidable, unyielding force he had fatally underestimated. The silence in the room was deafening, filled only by Celeste's ragged sobs and the distant hum of the city, now sounding like a mocking roar. The confrontation was over. Elara had spoken her truth, and the foundation of their world had irrevocably shifted. The Vance family left Elara's penthouse that evening not in a flurry of anger, but in a stunned, defeated silence. The elevator ride down was punctuated only by Celeste's choked sobs and Braden's furious, frustrated mutters, punctuated by the occasional angry kick at the polished elevator wall. Chloe, surprisingly, remained quiet, a rare flicker of comprehension in her eyes as the gravity of Elara's words began to sink in, realizing that her days of endless shopping sprees were over. They had arrived with demands and threats, they left with nothing but the chilling realization of their own financial destitution. The days and weeks that followed were a rapid, brutal descent into the reality they had so long avoided, a reality stripped bare of its gilded veneer. The first to go was the cleaner, then the gardener, then the personal chef. Garrett, who had never cooked a meal in his life beyond microwaving leftovers, struggled with basic tasks, burning toast and leaving dirty dishes piled in the sink. Celeste, accustomed to a pristine home maintained by others, watched in horror as dust accumulated and laundry piled up, her manicured hands recoiling from the mundane chores. Their social calendar, once brimming with exclusive events, gala dinners, and private club gatherings, began to empty. Without Elara's funds, the memberships to their elite country club, their exclusive social circles, and their frequent luxury outings became unsustainable. Invitations stopped coming. Their friends, fair-weather companions at best, solely attracted by their lavish spending and social status, slowly drifted away, sensing the sudden shift in their financial fortunes, unwilling to associate with those who were no longer part of the in crowd. The most pressing and terrifying consequence was the mortgage. With Elara's payments ceased, the bank moved swiftly and without mercy. Foreclosure notices arrived, stark white envelopes that mocked their once grand aspirations. Garrett scrambled, desperately trying to find a loan, to remortgage, to sell off assets. But their assets were largely illiquid, tied up in depreciating luxury cars or overvalued property that now had to be sold quickly, at a significant loss, in a desperate attempt to stave off public humiliation. The reality of having to downsize, to potentially lose their cherished mansion, filled them with a profound sense of humiliation and despair, a public fall from grace they could barely comprehend. After months of frantic efforts, they were forced to sell their mansion at a fraction of its perceived worth, moving into a modest suburban house that felt cramped, old, and suffocating compared to their former grandeur. The cars, too, became a symbol of their rapid decline. Without Elara's payments, repossessions began, a stark and public reminder of their lost status. Garrett's gleaming Mercedes was taken first, then Celeste's Range Rover, the tow trucks arriving unceremoniously, attracting the curious glances of neighbors. They were forced to buy smaller, older, used cars, a stark and public downgrade that crushed their image and their pride. Braden and Chloe, stripped of their allowances and their supplementary cards, found their once boundless social lives severely curtailed. Their friends, who had flocked to them for their lavish spending and access to luxury, now found them less interesting, less exciting, and gradually pulled away. Braden's startup dreams evaporated as quickly as they had appeared, unsupported by any capital, forcing him to confront the reality of needing to work for a living. Chloe's private school tuition remained unpaid, leading to her eventual transfer to a local public school, a crushing blow to her social standing and her parents' pride, forcing her into an environment she had always disdained. Their once elegant lives dissolved into a landscape of stress, arguments, and bitter recriminations. Garrett blamed Celeste for her extravagant spending and her inability to manage a budget. Celeste blamed Garrett for his lack of ambition and his failed business ventures. Both blamed Elara, their words filled with venom, but their actions paralyzed by their sudden helplessness. They tried contacting Elara again, numerous times, with increasingly desperate pleas, interspersed with angry accusations. They even enlisted the help of extended family, painting Elara as a cruel, senile old woman who had lost her mind and was vindicatively punishing her own flesh and blood. But Elara, through Mr. Sterling, had already made her position clear to anyone who inquired. Her financial decisions were her own, made with full clarity and intent, after years of thoughtful consideration. The extended family, aware of the Vance children's history of extravagance and their treatment of Elara, largely remained neutral, or quietly supported Elara's decision, having witnessed the pattern of exploitation themselves. While the Vance family descended into chaos, Elara Vance experienced a quiet, profound liberation. The days immediately following the confrontation were filled not with loneliness, but with a lightness she hadn't felt in decades. The heavy mantle of responsibility, the unspoken burden of her family's endless financial demands, had been lifted. The constant anxiety about their next request, the subtle manipulations, the feeling of being used, all of it had vanished. She started small. The morning after the confrontation, she did not wait for the phone to ring with demands. Instead, she called an old friend, Eleanor, a vibrant woman her own age whom she had neglected for years, always feeling too drained or too preoccupied with her family's problems to truly connect. "Eleanor," Elara said, her voice surprisingly light, a joyful lilt she hadn't heard in years, "would you care to have lunch?" "My treat, of course." Eleanor, delighted, agreed immediately. That simple lunch, filled with laughter and shared memories, a genuine connection without any hidden agendas, was the first breath of true freedom Elara had taken in years, a taste of life unburdened. She began to explore the city she loved, the one she had viewed from her penthouse window but rarely truly experienced beyond the confines of her gilded cage. She visited art galleries she had only meant to see, spending hours quietly admiring the brushstrokes and colors, losing herself in the beauty. She attended classical music concerts she had always enjoyed but never made time for, letting the melodies wash over her soul. She rediscovered her love for gardening, tending to a small herb patch on her balcony, her hands, once trembling with grief or frustration, now finding joy in the creation of something new and green. She even started taking a pottery class, finding immense satisfaction in molding clay, her creative spirit reawakened after years of dormancy. For so long, her life had revolved around the needs and whims of others, her identity defined by her role as provider. Now, it revolved around her own quiet joys, her own rediscovered passions, her own desires. Months passed. The seasons turned, and with them, the lives of the Vance family and Elara Vance diverged entirely, each moving on to an irrevocably different path. Elara's penthouse, once a solitary gilded cage, had transformed into a haven of peace and contentment, filled with the quiet hum of her own choosing. She hosted small, intimate gatherings with old friends and new acquaintances from her pottery and art classes, conversations flowing freely, unburdened by financial anxieties. Her laughter, once a rare and quiet sound, now filled the elegant rooms with a genuine warmth, a sound of unadulterated joy. She traveled, not on forced family vacations she secretly loathed, but on solo adventures to places she had always dreamed of seeing, places Arthur had wanted to take her. She explored the vibrant markets of Marrakesh, marveled at the ancient ruins of Rome, and strolled through the serene gardens of Kyoto, each journey a revelation, a step further into a life defined by her own desires, her own curiosity, and her own profound sense of self-worth. She had invested in herself, in her happiness, for the first time in what felt like an eternity. Her offshore accounts, once merely a tool for providing for her ungrateful family, were now funding her own vibrant, fulfilling existence, a life of quiet luxury and profound personal satisfaction. She felt lighter, healthier, and truly, unequivocally, free. The subtle lines of sadness around her eyes had softened, replaced by a radiant inner peace, a glow of contentment. The Vance family, however, had been forced to confront the harsh realities of self-reliance, a world without a safety net. They had lost their mansion, downsizing to a modest suburban house that felt cramped and inadequate, a constant reminder of their fall from grace. Garrett, after several failed attempts to secure new funding for his ventures, each one proving as flimsy as the last, had finally taken a mid-level management job, working long hours for a salary that barely covered their new, scaled-back expenses, a bitter pill for his ego. Celeste, forced to abandon her charity galas and her high-flying social life, now worked part-time in retail, a humiliating experience for her materialistic soul, as she served customers who once looked up to her. The constant pressure of bills, of managing a household without a hidden stream of wealth, had chipped away at their once polished exteriors, revealing the strained, unhappy couple beneath. Their arguments were more frequent, their resentments deeper, their marriage fraying under the strain of their new reality. Braden, after struggling to find his footing, initially blaming everyone but himself, eventually landed a low-paying entry-level job, a humbling experience for a young man who had always expected a life of effortless luxury to be handed to him. Chloe, though initially resentful of her public school and its lack of designer amenities, had surprisingly adapted, finding a group of genuine friends for the first time, friends who liked her for who she was, not for what she had. For the first time, she was learning the value of hard work and earning her own way, a nascent sense of responsibility slowly emerging. While the initial bitterness lingered, a faint glimmer of maturity began to emerge in the younger Vances, born of necessity rather than choice. They were learning, slowly and painfully, that privilege was not a right, and that self-sufficiency, however challenging, was the only path to true independence and self-respect. Elara rarely saw them, and she did not seek them out. She harbored no ill will, no desire for revenge. She simply existed, vibrant and content, within her new reality. She knew they were struggling, but she also knew that sometimes, the greatest act of love is to allow others to face the consequences of their own choices, to learn the lessons they refuse to acknowledge, to grow in ways they never would have if shielded by endless generosity. The story of Elara Vance is a poignant reminder that love cannot be bought, nor can respect be commanded through financial leverage. True family bonds are forged in shared moments of genuine affection, mutual support, and unconditional regard, not in the transactional exchange of wealth for convenience. It teaches us that endless sacrifice, when unappreciated and unreciprocated, can lead to quiet desperation, not to love. And ultimately, it underscores the profound truth that one's greatest loyalty, one's deepest investment, must always be in oneself, in one's peace, one's dignity, and one's right to live a life free from the emotional and financial exploitation of others. Elara Vance found her peace not by giving more, but by finally, courageously, taking back what was always hers, her life. Thank you for joining us on this incredibly powerful journey with Elara Vance. Her story, filled with quiet resilience and a triumphant reclaiming of self, is one we believe resonates deeply. If Elara's journey resonated with you, and if you find yourself drawn to stories of justice, transformation, and life lessons learned the hard way, then you're in the right place. Our channel is dedicated to bringing you more narratives just like this one, tales of ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges and finding their strength. Don't miss out on our next compelling story. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you're always the first to know when a new video drops. And now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a similar form of ingratitude from someone you've helped? Or perhaps you've had to make a difficult decision to prioritize your own well-being over the demands of others? What would you have done if you were in Elara's shoes? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We read every single one, and your insights truly enrich our community.